Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bells Must Ring podcast. I am your host, Andrew Rice. Um, a lot of different happenings in Rutgers basketball recently. Obviously, we had the two blowout losses to Minnesota and Washington. Now, I understand that the loss to Washington was only by 7 points, but it was pretty much as blowout as it could get. At no point did Rutgers really contend for the lead until Lino Mark had a good run around like 2.5 minutes left in the second half. Um, but yeah, it really at no point did it ever feel like Rutgers was going to truly contend in this game. But that leaves us with a lot of questions heading into the final 3 weeks of the season. Keep in mind that Rutgers hasn't won 2 out of 3 games in the final 3 games of the season since the 2021-2022 season. It becomes a lot tougher because I know we're still in the hunt for that first round bye. Um, with that first round bye in mind, um, it's just especially against like Maryland, Penn State, two teams that we're competing for at the bottom of the conference, but still competing for that first round bye. The fact that we have 2 games against them left just makes everything a little bit more difficult. Um, Now, especially when it comes to getting the first round bye, it's not something that I think will have any real effect on this season or anything like that. It's obviously not going to salvage a season that has gone completely down the drain. However, with Steve Peichel probably coming back next year, the verbiage used by Kelly Zinn in her previous interviews, where she talked about getting him more money, where she talked about giving him a competitive athletic department behind the scenes for what he needs to compete. The fact that she wants to sounds like she wants to bring everything onto a competitive level, at least for Big Ten standards. I think it's safe to say that Steve Peichel isn't going anywhere. So we might as well head into the offseason with some momentum. We might as well steal a couple games here and there to not maybe not on a positive note, but end the season at a high, end the season playing our best. But with two teams that we've already with every single team left on the schedule being a team that we played before, two of them being teams that we beat, ending the season on that high and securing the first round bye for the Big Ten tournament is a lot easier said than done. I think they'll probably steal a win at home against Penn State, but Maryland's a complete toss up, and Michigan State, it's just not happening. But let's get into the last 2 games for Rutgers. The first game was the 80-61 loss to Minnesota. Rutgers was like we started off with the lead, couple 3-pointers, one I think by Lino Mark, gave Rutgers a little bit of a boost to start the game, but after that it was just all Minnesota. Um, the the defense, the defense was absolutely shredded in both games. Nothing really worked on defense, and it makes me wonder, like, why do they keep going back to the man-to-man style of defense when it's clear that the full court press was working a little bit better, especially at the beginning of the season. Now I understand that the full court, well, not the beginning of the season, but halfway through the season, I understand that the full court press is a very taxing defense to run, but if it's the one that's working, why? I mean, it's kind of like, who cares if it's taxing? Like, yeah, um, it's definitely it wears on you after a while, especially with how energetic you have to play by attacking them the entire court, or forcing them to make errors the entire way up the court. But if it worked, and if at least it worked better than what's working now, why not go back to that? Um, to my understanding, both Minnesota and Washington shot extremely well um, throughout the game. I had Arnav covered the Minnesota game, so he knows. He was a little bit more in tune of everything that was going on there. But you know, yeah. But sorry, Cade Tyson for the Golden Gophers had 27 points, made 7 out of 9 on threes. Bobby Durkin, 12 points on 4 out of 7 shooting from deep, um, including several threes that helped Minnesota just get their lead out of control. Um, but yeah, it's like, if this was working previously, that full court press, if this was, the strategy that it wasn't working like a charm because nothing has so far this season, but if it was working before and if it was generating turnovers and if it was, forcing the opponent to take bad shots or whatever, why not go back to that style of defense? Um, it just doesn't make any sense why you would abandon something like that. And then continuing into the Washington game, um, Washington crushed Rutgers in the paint 40-24, but that's no surprise because Rutgers has not had any solid Big Ten big man play all season. It's just been an absolute disaster. Agbole is definitely the best big man they have on the roster, but that's really not saying much because boy has he looked terrible at times. Um, or we know what we're getting when he's out there on the court essentially. But just to kind of throw some numbers at you from the Washington game. Washington shot 50% from the field and 37% from three. Rutgers, in comparison, shot 40% from the field and 21% from three. We know that we don't have any sharpshooters on this team. We don't have those. We don't have those true, those tried and true 3-point shooters. I think that's what we wanted out of Harun Zerno, but we haven't gotten it so far this season. He's shown some flashes, but it hasn't been something that has been continuously strung together. And then, with the defense, again, 40%, 50% from the field and 37% from three. Um, it's that just can't happen, you know. Um, if anytime that half of an opponent's shots go in, you're obviously doing something wrong on defense. I think it happens a lot because Minnesota. I mean, what? Oh my God! Both Minnesota and Washington were extremely efficient passing the ball. I see too many times that our defenders just get lost in the sauce. Somebody gets turned around, something like that. So it's clear to me that the man-to-man isn't working. So why not go with that full court press that it seems like we use at times, but it doesn't. They don't use it the whole game, and by the time they use it, it's like, okay, well, it's not. It's not going to help you now. I feel like if they're going to try to at least steal 2 games down the stretch, they're going to have to implement um, some changes on defense have to be made. I would assume that they're going to have to implement the full court press for the last 2 games of the season. It's going to be, it's definitely going to be difficult. I still think we take that win at the win versus Penn State on senior night, but something has to change if they have any hope of winning any games for the rest of the season. Something has to change defensively. Some notes about the Washington game. Lathan Somerville returned to Rutgers for the first time in a Washington uniform. He was booed by fans. I was at the game. They were very verbal in their disapproval of his transfer. A couple people called him a money grabber. When he hit a free throw for Washington, I heard people say, "Why couldn't you do that for us?" It was just his return game. He got a very that was probably the most energized that the crowd was all night, and that says something. Um, when the opposing team or a player on the opposing team can generate more crowd noise than any player on the current roster, I think it shows just how down the toilet this season has gotten. Just to talk about some highlight some good Rutgers performances, because even though both games were very rough, there were some good performances on the team. Lino Mark in particular, he had 16 points against Minnesota, which at the time was a personal best for him. He followed that up by getting 18 points in what is obviously his career high against Washington. Um, not, I mean, there's not really much to take away from these games that are positive. So I just feel like mentioning the effort that Lino Mark has put in um, is definitely something worth acknowledging. Dylan Grant has just taken a major step back. Bryce Dortch does. We thought he could be an option at the 5 man, but we thought he could be an option at the 5. It's just not working out. Um, it was clear that he could hang a little bit with lower competition, but the second that we God, I got a frog in my throat. But the second that we took the step up to Big Ten competition, it's just not there. Um, he hasn't really. The adjustment has been rough, and we're seeing that game in and game out. The fact that they still act like they don't even know who the best 5 players on the team are is absolutely mind-boggling, especially like three games left in the season. And the only reason why I say that is because um, they had the 5 starters in the game against Washington. Most of 4 of them played under like 15 minutes, while players off the bench ended up contributing the most time for Rutgers. The only starter that really stayed in was Tariq Francis, but players like Ogbole, they were out for most of the game. I believe only Ogbole only got 15 minutes, which again, it's like, how do we not know who do we want on the court at this point in the season? How do we know? How do we not know who we want? Again, on the court at this point of the season, it's absolutely ridiculous. Um, I just it's hard to even fathom, to be honest with you, the fact that we're still rotating these guys, like we're trying to figure out our lines. But I think in the reality, the what we're figuring out is these guys are not Big Ten talent. And I do appreciate the work that each of the athletes, they come in, they play hard, you know, they try. But I think we're at a certain point where it's like, no matter who we rotate in, it's just not going to stack up to what they have on the other side. We might be able to pick off, the Marylands, the Oregons, and the Northwesterns of the world, the absolute bottom of the Big Ten. But anything above that Final Four, it's almost like a foregone conclusion, because Washington and Minnesota were seen as just above us in the rankings. Both teams are extremely beat up and starting players way down their depth chart, like Somerville. And it's just they not only have they not beaten them, they haven't even gotten close. So the teams right ahead of us, all of a sudden, we're non-competitive against when we can beat the teams right below us. And I think that just is a testament to the drop off of the final 5 in the Big Ten, because the the final 5, or the worst 5 and downward, you're not even looking at like poor Big Ten teams anymore. That's a huge drop off between the Washingtons and the Minnesotas compared to the Rutgerses and the Marylands. It's hard to it's just hard to fathom like how steep that drop off is, because especially Rutgers in their last two games against Washington and Minnesota, they didn't even put up a major threat, and they're supposed to be right behind them in the Big Ten standings. Rutgers has four Big Ten wins. I think Minnesota now has six with the win against Rutgers, and it's just like anything above them in their weight class, they can't punch above. Um, that might continue to be the case because, like I said, I don't think that Steve Peichel is going anywhere this year. There have been some rumblings on the NIL situation and some behind the scenes stuff that I caught on the Night Reports podcast. Kelly Zinn has done a significant improvements to the basketball NIL situation, where it seems that the NIL deal for this offseason is going to fall just short of around 10 million. That is a huge improvement from where it was last year. I think it was probably around like 5 million last year. I mean, we don't have the concrete details to explain everything, but the the fact that she was able to at least is projected to make these kind of improvements after an absolute dumpster fire of a season like the one we're currently in is really a testament to the work that they're doing behind the scenes to get everything on par with the rest of the Big Ten. Um, just to kind of piggyback on some stuff they discussed on their podcast to bring it to you guys. Multiple freshmen are possibly ready to leave, according to the Night Report. They have some stuff up on their boards. Sounds like a few of the freshmen who don't want to just stick around and be losers the entire time. They kind of have one foot out the door. So I would recommend, if you can, go and check that out. And it's just, with that being said, it's like, there's the winds of change are blowing, and the transfer portal is going to be a huge time for Rutgers basketball. I think that their objective should be to handle the big men situation first, and then kind of fill in the rest of the roster afterwards, because we know the big man market is going to be absolutely insane. Everybody's going to overpay, whatever have you. And that's going to make it tougher for Rutgers with even if Kelly Zinn gets the NIL war chest to around 10 million, it's still going to be significantly smaller than the other NIL war chests out there in the Big Ten. It's going to close the gap a little bit, but it's not going to make it so the gap isn't there. With that being said, though, if you're going to have if there's one position I think you got to target first and kind of like spend your most money on, it's going to be your center, your big man, whatever have you, somebody that can play the 5 role, and that's where you're gonna end up dumping all your money, for better or for worse. But I feel like that's how you have to play the game. You have to play like, okay, center cost the most, so we're going to handle the center first, and then, okay, this other position costs the second most, we're going to handle that second, third, fourth. And then if you only have like seven, or if you only make like 7 additions in the transfer portal or whatever have you, if you only make a certain amount of additions in the transfer portal and then just spend the money on whatever else, that's kind of how you're going to have to play it. You're going to have to play it in the sense that I'm going to spend my money just to at least get, at least get 5 what I know to be capable Big Ten starters, and then maybe like one or two quality backups after that, and then after that, it's like whatever's left is whatever's left. But having a at least a starting five that's on comparable Big Ten level, that's obviously going to be a huge step up for a program that has just not been on a Big Ten level at all this season. It doesn't matter who they play, who they play really. They have not um, put together a group of guys that can even compare to their peers in the conference, especially in a conference such as the Big Ten, where it's so top heavy when you have like teams like Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska at the top of everything. So we're gonna move on to some women's basketball. Um, kind of like some rumblings that I've been hearing about everything going on behind the scenes. Um, Women's basketball is obviously in a complete nosedive of a season right now. They look they are completely non-competitive in most games. Um, getting absolutely embarrassed by Big Ten teams. Their only Big Ten win was a 4-point win over Penn State. So it has been an extremely tough season for the women. The thing is, there is no guarantee that Coach Washington is going to be gone after this season. I understand that she's like one of the worst performing head coaches at Rutgers right now, but it obviously she's still coaching as of right now for the rest of the season. But it doesn't sound like the administration's mind is completely made up about Washington or whether she needs to be let go or not. Um, if she is not let go and is rather let go next year, I do know that her buyout decreases from somewhere around a million to 800K. That could be a reason for why they're delaying it. Obviously, no ruling has been made yet. But the problem is we don't have an inkling of what exactly is going on with the women's basketball program, especially when it comes to the future of Coach Washington. That was something that they also talked about over on the Night Reports podcast about how they don't know the future of the women's program. How recent rumblings have suggested that they're not completely sold on just getting rid of Washington just yet. So we'll have to see exactly everything that goes on over there. It's jury is still out on whether Coquise Washington returns next season. I think that, especially with the comments that I read over on our site here, I think that if they choose to return Washington, they're going to do a significant blow to their own credibility. And that's, you know, obviously you want to have people that can buy into the vision that you have for your athletic department. And I think keeping her around is going to sour the image um, that Rutgers fans have of what's going on behind the scenes. So it'll be interesting to see. You know, obviously everybody has their own opinion on the situation, but it'll be interesting to see what they do and the fallout that becomes of it from the Rutgers fan base. One last, thing to discuss is Rutgers football recruiting. Just wanted to give some quick updates on that. Junior Day is coming up on March 7th. Around 15 recruits are expected to show up to campus. Um, Rutgers is not trending well with top New Jersey talent that is in the Rivals 300. Rutgers hasn't done well with top New Jersey talent really ever, but especially recently, uh, they have failed to, I guess, win the hearts of their own state. Um, when you grow up with Rutgers constantly losing, which these kids, These kids were in middle school and elementary school and even high school when Rutgers was just completely terrible. It becomes a lot harder to win over the hearts of your state when you don't have that level of sustained success. But right now, Rutgers is not trending well with top New Jersey talent. Hopefully, that does change throughout the course of the recruiting process. But obviously, that's no guarantee. Um, and the last bit of news that I got here today is that we do have some official visits that have been planned. I wrote about this in my late January recruiting up. I mean, sorry, late February recruiting update. So go ahead and check that out. It has a lot of interesting tidbits of who Rutgers might be trending well with, who they're not trending so well with, who they're going after, um, everything like that. If you know, I obviously recommend that you check out that article. It's going to have a much better summary of all the little tidbits of information that we've picked up on the recruiting trail. But I did just want to talk about they do have some official visits starting to be planned. Jamar Taylor, a 3-star wide receiver from Wilmington, Delaware. Isaiah Alvarez, a 3-star wide receiver from Don Bosco Prep here in New Jersey. Lance Henderson, a 3-star safety from Southern High School in Durham, South Carolina. Aiden Gibson, a 3-star running back from Woodruff, South Carolina. Javian Robinson, a 4-star wide receiver from McKeesport, Pennsylvania. And then Sidney Padilla, the only commit of the Rutgers 2027 recruiting class so far. 3-star tight end from West Orange. These are all players that have already pledged to come to campus. Those official visits happen on the last week of oh my god, I keep wanting to say January. On the last week of May, the last weekend of May, heading into June. But yeah, even though Rutgers has not, I would have liked to see one or two more commits so far for this cycle. The fact that it's still early, they're getting these guys to commit to coming to campus. Hopefully that they could continue to recruit as well as they have in years past. The defense, obviously, last year left a lot to be desired. Hoping that the whole situation surrounding the defense with the defensive coordinator, the terrible defense last year, doesn't have a major impact on recruiting. It's obviously going to have some, but the hope is that it's not going to have a major impact on recruiting. But yeah, so those are all the different players that are coming that have already scheduled their official visits to campus. They're locked in. I want to say all of them are for the last weekend in May, besides Padilla, who's on the first weekend in June. So that's when they're all coming to campus. Hopefully, they all just these official visits have been money makers for Rutgers in the past couple of years. Especially, I want to say it was 2 recruiting classes ago, where players would go home after the weekend and almost commit right then and there. I want to say with Kamar Archie and all of them, DJ McClary, getting those pile of commitments that happened, boom, boom, boom. Hopefully they continue to be a factory for commitments like they have been in the past, but we'll have to see when that comes around at the end of May. That pretty much does it for all the news I have for you guys here today. Thank you guys for sticking with me for another half an hour of this. I do plan on going out there trying to find some other co-hosts, maybe even just to get some guests on the pod to better spark conversation, so I'm not just lecturing information at you guys. But for right now, if you guys can give me 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the YouTube channel, it really would help. It really would help me out. and help us grow everything that we're doing here. Really appreciate all your guys' support. And as always, remember the bells must ring.